Hello, hello, welcome, please come in. Our Ranger-only runs continue this week in Final Fantasy V. Much like Final Fantasy III, I have very little experience using the Ranger class. I mean, there is, of course, the incredibly busted dual-wield barrage spellblade combo for big damage, but it's honestly one I've not actually used before. Combined with my general distaste for bows in Final Fantasy games, and the Ranger being less interesting to me than dedicated casters who have a wider array of abilities, this just isn't a class that has ever really caught my interest. As such, I'm very excited to dive in and see how well this class stands alone. Anyway, this is the first boss down and crystal shards acquired, and thanks to the modified save file, I now have access to all classes in the game, and can make my entire party Rangers. And first destination is over to Tool to get some free items from treasure chests. A big issue early on is that while Rangers can use daggers, you can't actually buy daggers in this town? Which is very weird to me, but that's what I'm stuck with. Which means I only have 2 weapons for my 4 characters, and none of them are actually very good. I expect I'm going to need to do some grinding to make this damage work at all, because yeah, that is really bad damage. It does get me up to job level 1 though, which gives me my first action command, Animals, which is kind of a nothing command that is too unpredictable to really be... Was that 200 damage? Oh, right, I guess they didn't scale Animals for the very start of the game? Because you normally wouldn't have Ranger until Crescent Island. Well, looks like the first few bosses should be handled. Anyway, that is the first boss down, very quickly, and it's into the ship graveyard. Random items acquired, and it's time for the next boss, Siren. So, for context, the Animals command generates a random number between 0 and the user's level, and summons an animal based on that. I expect this will stop being useful at some point, but for now it is very strong. And that is Siren down. That means I can reach Carwin and buy new equipment. Though to be honest, I don't think these new daggers are going to be useful. Squirrel triggers fairly frequently, and deals more damage than a basic attack at this level. Oh well, can't hurt. Anyway, time to head into the North Mountain, and because my characters are now level 5, they now sometimes summon bees, which is also quite good, although Squirrel can't hit flying enemies, apparently. Learn something new every day. And heading through the mountain gets me to my next boss fight, Magissa. Start by moving all my characters into the back row to reduce physical damage, and then just spam animals. Between squirrels and bees, my damage is very high for this point in the game, and Magissa drops pretty quickly, followed shortly thereafter by Forza. Another boss, easily handled. So it's time to fly south to Waltz. This town has better equipment to buy to increase my defense, and the castle is very lootable. Love it. Anyway, Waltz Tower is in serious trouble, and we need to rush over to protect the crystal there. Oh right, I need to actually talk to the king first. Okay, now the tower is in trouble. Alright, let's see how wild animals stand up against the next boss, Garula. So the damage is still the same, still very good. Garula's counterattacks are pretty devastating, but honestly it's just not that bad. Despite being under-leveled, being in the back row, and having high damage mitigation, this fight is a pretty easy matchup. I really was not expecting animals to do so much heavy lifting. Anyway, it's now over to Karnak. This town sells better knives and better armor. Will these knives actually get used in combat? Honestly, probably not. Being able to do good damage and stay in the back row is just too valuable. Okay, let's see how the fire ship goes. And yeah, Squirrel may be less effective, but bees are still doing good work. There's just something so funny about summoning bees to do your dirty work. Oh, Nightingale, that's right, I'm level 10 now. This heals the whole party a decent amount and cures poison and darkness. Given that using animals has no cost to it, I think I'm nearly unstoppable at this point. At least as long as Nightingale shows up consistently enough to keep me healed. Anyway, the fire ship itself has mostly unremarkable treasure chests, and it's time for Liquid Flame. I am kind of curious how effective it's going to be to just spam animals. And the answer is not actually great. Nightingale is fairly consistent, but Liquid Flame has counterattacks to every single attack, meaning Nightingale isn't quite as reliable as I'd like to keep my party healed up. This would improve as I leveled, getting up to 50% at its highest point, but it's still a bit below that. Honestly, I could probably win this fight if I really wanted to, but I'm underleveled as it is, I might as well do some grinding. Mostly accomplished by just spamming animals. Honestly, my physical damage is starting to get up there. I should probably actually just use basic attacks. Anyway, grinding done, and it's back into the fight. I now have more HP to tank big hits, and have a higher chance of using Nightingale. This is obviously a balancing act, because I don't want to leave Liquid Flame in any of its forms for too long, but I also don't want my party to die. And yeah, no, that didn't quite work. I think the answer mostly comes down to durability at this point. Nightingale is great at healing, but it's almost too much healing. I don't really have enough HP to capitalize on it. It does feel like any time I make it through a section in this game really underleveled, the game punishes me for my hubris by having a boss my nonsense can't easily deal with. Okay, back into the fight. My level is up, so more Nightingales, and my HP is up, so there's a bit more padding to survive attacks. Nightingale is triggering enough that I can honestly just leave the fight on auto battle. Liquid Flame doesn't really have any attacks dangerous enough to threaten me now, and Nightingale is consistent enough healing. And that is Liquid Flame down, which means it's time to escape from Karnak Castle, though only after grabbing as many shiny items as I can take the time to get, and then skip the Deathclaw fight through careful targeting attacks to kill the soldier before the wolves. Okay, we are moving this run. This opens up the path to my next destination, the Library of the Ancients, and next boss on the docket is Ifrit. Much like Liquid Flame, I'm pretty sure I can just auto-battle my way to victory. Ifrit doesn't counterattack, and while he can deal big damage with Fyra, it's not actually that big. And yep, that is Ifrit down. We're so close to actually having bows on this bow-wielding class. Just one more boss to go, but it's also my least favorite, Byblos. Byblos counters every attack, sometimes with Protect, sometimes with Attack, sometimes with Drain. I really need to keep my party healed up as much as possible, so it's time to spam animals. The good news is I am level 19, meaning I have reached the highest probability of triggering Nightingale at 50% of the time. This does mean I'm using damaging moves less frequently, but it also means my party isn't dying constantly, which is great. The first portion of the fight is mostly fine. Slow isn't too big of a hindrance, neither is losing MP, and while Byblos can confuse targets, that's easy enough to break. My real concern is the final stage of the fight, where Byblos starts countering attacks with Drain. This doesn't outpace my healing, but it does actually outpace my damage by a decent chunk in some cases. The good news is that he doesn't actually counter with Drain every time, meaning I can slowly whittle away the last of his health and bring him down thanks to the power of squirrels, bees, and birds. What a weird strategy I've cobbled together. Anyway, that is Byblos defeated. That means the fire ship has been acquired as an actual transport, and I can immediately head over to Crescent Island. The ship gets sunk by the random whirlpool, but who cares? This town sells bows! And they are elemental bows, letting me target some elemental weaknesses. Huzzah! Okay, time to acquire the black chocobo to fly, and it's time for the next boss, Sandworm, which is weak to, checks notes, water. Okay, can't do anything about that. Good news is I don't actually care because my damage is so good. I'm no longer being outclassed by squirrels. Hooray! Sandworm dead, and it's south to Ronka to get teleported back to Under Crescent Island. Pull, don't push, and it's nap time. To prepare to acquire the airship and start the next boss fight against the Crayclaw, which is weak to lightning damage, and yeah, no, that's really good damage. That took 3 hits. Anyway, over to Ronka, which ascends into the sky, and then what am I doing? Anyway, back to Crescent Island to get marching orders, to the first meteorite to grab some adamantite, which requires fighting the next boss in Adamantoise. The Adamantoise has very high physical negation, but it is also weak to ice damage, and conveniently, I have a bow for that. So this boss is pretty quick. And adamantite acquired, and it's time to fly up to face down the defenses of the floating fortress. Good news, everything here is weak to lightning damage, which I also have a bow for, so while the flamethrowers deal good damage and the missile launchers are as annoying as ever, the fights here are mostly fine. This reveals the big cannon, and it's boss time. First priority is to take out the launchers on the cannon head. These have a decent chunk of HP and can inflict old, which is bad because I can't cure it. However, once dead, I can just spam attacks against the main cannon body. I am trying to use Bartz to heal the party with animals, but Nightingale has become less reliable as I've leveled. Let's just give that another shot. I guess once the cannon goes off, I should have 2 characters use animals to ensure I actually get the healing. Wave Cannon always deals half the target's max HP and damage, so with Nightingale healing more than that, there really isn't any risk of this fight not going my way. And that is the cannon destroyed. And with the fortress's defenses removed, it's time to head in. I will probably need to get a bit more experience before the next boss. I'd really love to get Ranger up to the max job level to unlock their best ability, and after a bit of grinding, I get Rapid Fire. This works similarly to FF3's Barrage ability, dealing 4 hits of damage to random enemies at reduced damage. Although job level isn't a thing in FF5, at least not in the same way, but that means Rapid Fire starts at 50% damage per hit and stays there, which is still good and means double damage per attack. Now that everyone has Rapid Fire, I can also head over to Istri to pick up a Flame Ring. This allows one character to absorb fire damage and will be essential later on. Really, I just need to buy it now so that I have it. Anyway, back into Ronka Ruins, pick up a few treasures, and it's time for the Archaeoavis fight. Now, this boss is actually 5 bosses and a trench coat, and each one has slightly different elemental immunities. Rapid fire deals great damage thanks to the bonus damage of bows against flying enemies, but I do have to switch bows partway through to actually deal damage. And then the Archaeoavis revives, meaning it is now immune to all elements. Fortunately, Bart's has a dark bow I got as a random drop during my brief grinding stint. This has no element and higher attack power, so that's the Archaeoavis down. And that means Galuf is back to his world and we are going to follow, which means mini boss rush. First on the list is the Parabolus, and my strategy here is the same as ever. Deal damage to them so their self-destructibility deals less damage, then just survive as they blow themselves up. This is not a fast process, but it is effective. Next up is Titan. Rapid fire deals very nice damage, and my party can pretty easily survive the Earthshaker attack that finishes off the fight. One meteor left to go, and this one has a Chimera Brain. And this is just the Titan fight again, but with no final attack, so it's very easy. And with all 4 meteors dealt with, it's time to dive into Galuf's world. Here, the party gets immediately captured and imprisoned by Exdeath, so it's time for Galuf to save the day. And considering this Gilgamesh fight is easy and Galuf deals good damage, this is not particularly difficult. Party reunited, it's time for a big bridge and the battle thereupon, which is still very easy. Rapid fire doubling damage and ignoring enemy evasion is just so good. Gilgamesh at the end is more dangerous, and he can even buff himself in phase 2. It doesn't really matter though, my party's in the back row, has good armor, and deals pretty decent damage through Protect. Exdeath's barrier is up, my party's flung far away, and we reach Rigol. Then south into this forest, then into the caves below to rescue this Moogle. The enemies here are weak to lightning damage. I have a lightning bow. This is very easy. And the boss of this cave dies to a single phoenix down. All very standard and very easy. Ranger is really going quite well, actually. I do always appreciate this loot room of Moogle treasure. Anyway, it's over to Castle Ball, and my next task is to get medicine for a sick dragon, which I'm not expecting to be super difficult. Over to Quelb, where the shops sell dark and killer bows, which are nice. Ooh, new armor too? Werewolf Town is always the best town. New equipment in tow, and it's time to climb a mountain. Hooray! And next boss. This boss summons little plants that inflict status effects. Normally you want some multi-target damage here, but honestly rapid fire is basically just as good, with even a single hit taking out the little plants. So that's another boss easily killed, and it never even attacked. So it's back to Ball to heal up our dragon, and we now have flight. And with that dragon, we fly over to Zizat's fleet, take a little nap, and it's now boat fight time. And if you expected my grand strategy for this fight to be select rapid fire and turn on auto battle, you are correct. I do occasionally stop to use a high potion, and by occasionally I mean once. I used one high potion, and that's Gilgamesh down. Alright then, into the submarine and over to the base of the barrier tower, and next boss up is Atomos, which loves to use Comet to kill characters. But once a character is dead, it basically does nothing, meaning I can just spam rapid fire. This is fast enough that no one even gets absorbed. And now we have a free submarine and can head over to Guido's cave to grab the branch of Moor. And in the town of Moor, I can pick up some new bows. Hooray! New bows. The town also has new armor, but I'm very broke. I might as well do some light grinding to get money. I really want that new armor. And into the Forest of Moor, grab some treasure to sell later, and then a fire happens. And then a crystal boss fight. Sadly, rapid fire is not a good idea here, as it would potentially mean multiple crystals at low HP, and that is a recipe for disaster. Instead, I can drop the top crystal to critical health. It will then start spamming Firaga to heal Bartz thanks to his flame ring, and then Bartz can slowly start picking off the other. Okay, so sometimes crystals will get multiple turns in a row. I'm not actually sure why that happens, but let's just try that again. I assume the crystals have the same speed stat, so really unsure why they would be able to act more than once before I get healed. Let's actually try targeting a different one first. Leave the water crystal for second to last, shall we? And there we go. Crystal's defeated, and that means Galuf is out of the party, and Kryl is in. But with the Forest of Moor done, all that's left in World 2 is Exdeath's castle. This also houses the Hayate bow, which has a higher attack power. It also can trigger rapid fire sometimes on basic attacks, but who cares when Rangers should always have rapid fire anyway? And then the Gilgamesh fight, which is optional, but I always forget to not open this chest. So it's time to spam rapid fire. This fight is not long. I mean, it's actually a bit long, but that's really only because Gilgamesh is very chatty and will not stop talking at any point in the fight. Goodbye, Gilgamesh. See you later. And now it's the really scary fight, Exdeath. Rapid fire is still dealing good damage, taking out over 1000 HP per use, but Exdeath is no joke. He has strong physical attacks, dangerous magic, He can also inflict Doom and Zombie, but I actually think I damaged him too fast to actually use those abilities. Honestly, healing in this fight takes up a lot of time, and rangers have nothing to help with that, so it's just time to full send the attacks and hope it's good enough. And it is! That's honestly one of the easiest attempts at this boss I've ever had. I knew Rapid Fire was good, but I'm a little surprised at how good it is. Anyway, it's time for World 3, which starts off with Bards and Kryl, who must team up to take on an Antlion. This has a weakness to ice, and I still have my many elemental bows. It does have a decent amount of HP, so it's not a quick fight, but it's also not that difficult. Ferris then rejoins the party, and it's over to the Pyramid of Moor. These gargoyles revive each other when they die. Rapid Fire isn't a true multi-target attack, but it's probably good enough. And yes, it actually is. Fantastic. The pyramid has a lot of treasures, but I'm going to skip most of them because I want to get Lena back in the party ASAP. The pyramid doesn't have a boss, so that's a tablet acquired, and back to the Guardian Tree, and it's actual next boss fight time. Melusine has a changing barrier, and unlike Hein from FF3, elemental weapons work properly, so I can equip everyone with fire bows and deal big damage with rapid fire. She never even gets the chance to change her elemental weakness. That puts Lena back in the party, and I've reacquired the airship. So it's over to the sealed castle to grab the Yoichi bow. This is way stronger than the other bows I have access to, and acquiring more strong bows is gonna be a whole thing. But for now, it's over to the town of Moor to buy all new endgame equipment, the Thief Dagger, and the Black Chocobo. Hooray! And now it's time to start preparing for the final dungeon. First up is to take the Black Chocobo north to this desert and into Phoenix Tower. Thanks to the Thief Dagger I grabbed in Moor, I can activate Mug and steal Reflect Rings from these Parthenopes. I will need 2 of these. This honestly takes longer than it should, because I get really unlucky with Mug triggers and Steal Chance, but it's not too long. Reflect Rings acquired, and now over to the Island Shrine. There's nothing here I actually care about, but it is required to access other areas that I do care about. Wow, you can really see the difference between my characters with good bows versus not good bows. I really need to fix that. The boss of this is the Wendigo, which has 4 targets, but after the first hit, only 1 enemy is real. From there, I just need to target the correct one of the 4. I could do this manually, but rapid fire hits random targets and can often hit the correct target multiple times. This also means I'm getting 16 attacks per round to potentially hit the real Wendigo, making the process much faster. Moving on. Now, next up is the Fork Tower. Those of you who've been here before, or seen my Monks Only run, will know that the Omniscient fight is a problem. His strong magic attacks are completely negated by Reflect Rings. However, if you hit Omniscient with any non-magic, he will cast Return, resetting the fight. And I have no magic. Now, this could be seen as a hard stop for this fight, but that's not correct. You see, there is actually a pretty quick way to handle this fight, because Omniscient is vulnerable to status effects like Stop and Silence. Now, most weapons that inflict these statuses, like the magic bow, don't actually work 100% of the time, and running that gamble enough times, and it will fail before the boss is dead. However, one such weapon actually works a bit differently, and that is the Mage Masher. This does not inflict silence, it casts silence, and a cast spell can be reflected, and Omniscient only casts Return if you attack him. Which means, by attacking my ally, waiting for Reflect to trigger, and actually hit, I can get off 1 strong rapid fire. Silence's duration is really short on Omniscient, so I can only safely get off 1 attack each time, but that's enough to easily outpace Omniscient's limited healing. And once he gets to low HP, he starts spamming tier 3 spells, which is great because it means he's now dealing even more damage to himself. And that is Omniscient down. And the great thing is that this strategy relies entirely on daggers, and the only classes who can't equip daggers are White Mages, which I'm not doing, and Monks, which I've already done. So this will work for every remaining class. Special thanks to YouTube commenter Foxy Bezazzled, who handled this strategy to me on a silver platter. You are appreciated. Anyway, beating Omniscient destroys the Fork Tower and gets me back the submarine. This lets me access Istory Falls, and the whole reason I reached this dungeon was to get this. The Artemis Bow, the strongest bow in the game. These can be stolen later. We will get to it. And now I can leave, because I don't actually care about completing this dungeon. Next up, I can take Boko all the way around the world to grab the magic lamp, which I will need later, and then to Moor to sell things and buy Hermes sandals. That auto haste is just too strong. And that means it's time to dive into the Rift for an endgame boss rush. Let's see if these rangers can stick the landing. First boss on the list is Califisteri. Rapid Fire seems to bypass her counter drain, and the Artemis Bow is critting with basically every hit, so this fight is very fast. Okay, moving on to a panda. Sadly, rapid fire does not bypass its counterattacks, and that drain is really damaging. At least my damage is quite good. A panda is weak to fire damage, but the fire bows are just too weak to use at this point. And the Artemis bow seems to be critting 100% of the time. Is a panda a magic beast? Is that what's happening here? This fight is actually a bit tricky. A panda's drain is pretty damaging to my kind of underleveled party, and really only Bards is dealing enough damage to be that usable. So everyone else needs to focus on defense and healing to survive, but a panda eventually goes down. Next on the list is Azul Magia, mostly because I want to unlock the save point here because it's convenient. Azul Magia, as the name suggests, has a lot of dangerous blue magic. Now, my damage is quite good, which is nice, but some of that blue magic is legitimately terrifying. But too many of these bosses' moves just do nothing, so it fails to be frightening. Hooray, save point. Next up is Catastrophe. Now, I really need to take this boss out quickly before its Earthshaker can... Oh, I see. So I'm gonna go level up, because I definitely can't win this fight at this level. And I'm going to level up against these Dragon Avises specifically. Partly because they take a lot of damage from bows, but also because they have a rare steel that I need. Because these have Artemis bows. And considering I have one Yoichi bow, one Artemis bow, and a bunch of very weak bows from much earlier in the game, I'm gonna need 2 more bows. Thief Dagger doesn't always trigger when you attack, steel doesn't always work, and Artemis bows are the rare steel, so this is gonna take a while. Hooray! At least you, the viewer, will be spared from this because I can skip ahead to now, when the grinding is done, for now. I've acquired a bunch more levels, hopefully enough to survive Earthshaker, and gotten 1 bow, which isn't the 2 I need, but I'll take what I can get for now. And that means I am back into the Catastrophe fight. And good news is my damage is a bit better. Even better news is I can just barely survive 1 Earthshaker, and 1 is all I need because this boss is actually not that durable, it just kills you very quickly. So we've gotten over that minor roadblock, surely nothing else will end up taking even more time. Next up is Halicarnassus, and this fight is not difficult. My damage is great and consistent, and while Halicarnassus can inflict a lot of status effects, I can cure them all fairly easily. He doesn't even make it that far into his attack rotation. He doesn't even get to Holy. Okay, that means we can move on to the next boss, Twintania. This boss hits the whole party a bunch, but my only real goal is to survive until it starts charging Giga Flare. Then attack with the Assassin's Dagger. This will... Okay, let's try that again. Hitting with the Assassin's Dagger will... Hey, Dagger, can you trigger death, please? We're on a schedule here. You know what, I'm just gonna use the Magic Lamp. It means I'll need to recharge it, but my patience is expired. Anyway, then it is Gilgamesh who does a monologue, and it's very boring. That is actually the last required boss fight in the Rift. All that remains is Exdeath himself. But before I try Exdeath, I really need to get a final Artemis bow. Let's cut ahead, shall we? Okay, so I've reached level 40, the recommended level to face Exdeath, and I finally have another Artemis bow. Wow, that was really tedious. I should swing by the shop and more real quick to sell all these tridents I have in my inventory. For some reason. I can then buy Hermes sandals, so my entire party has auto haste and a couple elixirs just to top off my supply. Let's finish this game, shall we? So good news is my damage against Exdeath is great. Artemis and Yoichi bow deal good damage, and rapid fire just doubles it. I'm out of the first phase, and Exdeath didn't even have time to use White Hole. Not even once! I can then throw out the Magic Lamp to deal some all-target damage and insta-kill the rear segment. From there, it's really all about killing the bottom segment. I really can't afford to use rapid fire because I need to take that out before Almageist one-shots my party. Okay, so that's really bad, actually. Almageist in many cases just acts as a you don't have enough HP to fight the final boss check, and while Rangers are generally fairly durable, their HP is actually a bit lacking. And Almageist is really strong. Okay, let's try that another time. My damage is very good, and Almageist can miss, though I have no idea what prompts its mischance. If I can just deal enough damage fast enough and get 1 or 2 misses, I may be able to... Yeah, no, this isn't gonna work. Time for more grinding, which is a real bummer. Honestly, Ranger is doing so well, and it just sucks to trip right at the finish line. Almageist is just such an obnoxious attack. Oh well, only good news is I can now fight the much more XP-rich Iron Giant since my bow situation is sorted. Okay, 5 levels obtained, and we are up to 1900-ish health. Probably actually a bit overkill, but with how long this fight can take, I prefer not to undershoot it. Back into the Exdeath fight, my damage has only improved, with regular Exdeath getting 1 attack off. Geez, that auto haste and rapid fire are bonkers. and then prioritize attacking the bottom section again, and good news, Almagest isn't a one-shot. It does deal a lot of damage, so out come the elixirs, and out comes the first Grain Cross, and okay, that's not too bad as far as statuses go, and that is the bottom section dead. That is the difficult part of this fight. The two sections left will continue strong physical attacks and Grand Cross, but as long as both are alive, they aren't too dangerous. However, once only one section is remaining, it will start spamming Meteor to kill my entire party. Now, a smarter person would carefully portion out the damage to both segments to kill them both in close proximity. But, you know, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna spam Rapid Fire, set the game to auto battle, and hope it doesn't bite me in the butt. Rapid Fire should, on average, hit both targets equally. What's the worst that can happen? Oh right, the meteors. Now I could try to heal Lena and Kryl, but honestly I just need to hope I can get off enough rapid fires to kill Neo Exdeath, and it worked, even though it shouldn't have. And that was Final Fantasy V, beaten with only Rangers, and that was pretty fun. I was really curious how well bows would actually work in this game, and I got a lot more mileage out of the animal command than I expected. I really wish there was a better way to counter Almagest, and that Artemis bows had a better steal rate. But I will have more to say about that in the summary video, out in a few weeks. I did want to shout out that I do have a Patreon, linked in the description. I spend a lot of time making these videos, so if you enjoyed the video, want to support the channel, and are financially stable enough to do so, that exists. No pressure though, this channel is free to enjoy for everyone, and will remain that way. For now, if you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. If you'd like to see more of this, feel free to subscribe. Hey, maybe leave a comment if you have something you'd like to say. But whatever you decide to do, have a safe trip home.